So as sediment displaces more and more of the reservoir volume, the value that reservoir provides goes down. And that's not the only problem it causes. Making reservoirs shallower limits their use for recreation by reducing the navigable areas and fostering more unwanted algal blooms. Silt and sand can clog up gates and outlets to the structure and damage equipment like turbines. Sediment can even add forces to a dam that might not have been anticipated during design. Dirt is heavier than water. Let me prove that to you real quick. It's a hard enough job to build massive structures that can hold back water, and sediment only adds to the difficulty. But I think the biggest challenge of this issue is that it's inevitable, right? There are no natural rivers or streams that don't carry some sediments along with them. Magnitude does vary by location. The world's a big place, and for better or worse, we've built a lot of dams across rivers. There are a lot of factors that affect how quickly this truly becomes an issue at a reservoir, mostly things that influence water-driven erosion on the land upstream. Soil type is a big one. Sandy soils erode faster than silts and clays. That's why I use sand in the model. Land use is another big one. Vegetated areas like forests and grassland hold on to their soil better than agricultural land or areas affected by wildfires. But in nearly all cases, without intervention, every reservoir will eventually fill up. Of course, that's not good, but I don't think there's a lot of appreciation outside of a small community of industry professionals and activists for just how bad it is. Dams are among the most capital-intensive projects that we humans build. We literally pour billions of dollars into them, sometimes just for individual projects. This is kind of its own can of worms, but I'm just speaking very generally that society often accepts pretty significant downsides in addition to the monetary costs, like environmental impacts and the risks of failure to downstream people and property, in return for the enormous benefits dams can provide. And sedimentation is one of those problems that happens over a lifetime. So it's easy at the beginning of a project to push it off to the next generation to fix. And there aren't a lot of easy answers. To some extent, we consider sediment during design. Modern dams are built to withstand the forces, and the reservoir usually has what's called a dead pool, basically a volume that's set aside for sediment from the beginning. Low-level gates sit above the dead pool so they don't get clogged. But that's not so much a solution as a temporary accommodation, since this kind of dead pool doesn't live forever. I think for most, the simplest idea is this. If there's dirt in the lake, just take it out. Dredging soil is really not that complicated. We've been doing it for basically all of human history. And in some cases, it really is the only feasible solution. You can put an excavator on a barge or a crane with a clamshell bucket and just dig. Suction dredgers do it like an enormous vacuum cleaner, pumping the slurry to a barge or onto shore. But that word feasible is the key. The whole secret of building a dam across a valley is that you only have to move and place a comparatively small amount of material to get a lot of storage. Depending on the topography and design, every unit of volume of earth or concrete that makes up the dam itself might result in hundreds up to tens of thousands of times that volume of storage in the reservoir. But for dredging, it's 1-to-1. For every cubic meter of storage you want back, you have to remove it as soil from the reservoir. At that point, it's just hard for the benefits to outweigh the costs. There's a reason we don't usually dig enormous holes to store large volumes of water. I mean, there are a lot of reasons, but the biggest one is just cost. Those 5 million tons of sediment that flow into Lewis and Clark Reservoir would fill around 200,000 in-dump semi-trailers. That's every year, and it's assuming you dry it out first, which, by the way, is another challenge of dredging.